I'm on the beautiful south side of Chicago at the former workplace of the man who blessed us with the phrase, "less is more." While he was a man of few words, he left quite a lot of physical stuff behind to be able to show everyone exactly what he meant. Like right now, I'm surrounded by 20 buildings that he designed on the campus of the Illinois Institute of Technology. Hey guys, it's me, Stewart Hicks from A Few Weeks Later. After recording all that stuff over at IIT, I realized that I was pretty awestruck by the power of the campus. In the heat of the moment, I may have forgotten to mention a few things along the way, and I used some jargon that might need a little bit of extra explanation. So what I'll do is that I'll chime in every once in a while to help contextualize some of that stuff when I need to. In my defense, though, it's not so simple to celebrate a phrase like less is more without some built-in contradiction. That's kind of its nature. Less is more. It might be helpful to think of those two versions of me, the one over on site and the one now, as representing two sides of a debate. Over there, I'm completely bought into the rhetoric of modern architecture of the 1940s and the 50s. While here, you can think of me more like a skeptic who's adding a counterpoint to the positive spin that's been rehearsed over all these years. It's like a two-sided debate. It'll be fun. The coiner of the phrase was the modernist architect Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, and he was a prominent figure of the modernist movement. Not exactly. Less is more was actually told to Mies by his first boss while he was in Germany. He was working for the architect Peter Behrens, and the young Mies intern was trying to impress him by overcomplicating the design for the backside of a factory. Behrens basically told the guy to quit wasting his time. But Behrens himself actually took the phrase from a poem that was written by Robert Browning in 1885. That poem's about a painter who's lamenting why he isn't actually more appreciated and famous for the work that he's doing. And when he utters less is more, he's having this profound realization that even though his paintings are like technically perfect and precise, that they lack emotional depth and soulful expression. So he's thinking to himself how sometimes less technical perfection can lead to more emotional impact. So it's almost exactly the opposite of the way that Mies uses it. The less is more version of his name is just Mies, which in Finnish means man, and in Dutch is short for Bartholomeus, or son of the earth. Well, this son of the earth spread his gospel to anyone that would pay him to listen, clients and students alike.
I have to ask you, what is a human scale and what is a human dimension?
And it's right here where he did his most profound preaching. It's where he spent 20 years guiding students as the head of the architecture school, and it's where his firm designed the expansion of the 120-acre university campus. Located in the Bronzeville neighborhood of Chicago, the campus and its buildings are the masterwork of his lifelong pursuit of spreading lessness. Yeah, see, like here, things like spreading lessness. I don't think it makes much sense upon viewing it again. I think that what I meant was that it's kind of like the nothing from the never-ending story.
So the nothing grows stronger.
What is the nothing?
It's the emptiness that's left.
Ludwig Mies van der Rohe was a man with 5 words in his name, but he only needs 3 words to spread and change the world forever. And I'm at the birthplace of it all. Because here, each exquisitely perfect steel and glass structure that Mies left behind offers its own lesson for how less can blossom into more. I just realized that the word less and lesson, they share the same root word. I think it's because a lesson is like a small segment of teaching. These lessons are right here for us to learn from if we take the time to decipher them. So let's head inside. Locked. So let's stay outside on this beautiful December day to see exactly how less becomes more. God, it's cold. Some of these lessons are about how materials come together with grace and poetic elegance. It's no coincidence that Mies also coined the phrase, God is in the details. I'm feeling the presence of God all around me right now. Less is more means that we can see from the outside how the buildings work. They're stripped of all the extraneous stuff that's found cluttering up normal buildings. Mies only leaves behind the stuff that's absolutely essential, and he exposes it for everyone to witness and to contemplate. Normally, parts of a building like the steel structure would be hidden away behind facades or sandwiched unceremoniously between a roof and a ceiling. But here, as a result of more lessing, the steel structure is right here on the outside. I think more lessing, I think, was supposed to mean the act of removing elements from something, like to make it more aesthetically pure or something. I regret saying it at all. This is a beautiful example of more lessing. The structure is right here on the outside so that you can see it. From the structure's point of view, the steel I-beams can feel and experience the beautiful weather of Chicago, just like I am right now. Steel loves the cold, and it reacts by physically shrinking in size and generously sharing its coldness by taking it from the outside and drawing it into the interior of the building with incredible efficiency. That's a situation called thermal bridging. Having structure on the outside of the building also means that it's able to greet the snow and the rain. The steel reacts out of pure joy by turning into rust that bubbles up underneath the black paint that's meant to protect it. That way, the steel can touch the snow and rain directly. The steel wants to share its joy with the other nearby materials, like these bricks below it. So it shares its rust by slowly releasing it into the beautiful rivers of water that cascade down the facade. In this heaven of details and land of less, there's no need for gutters or other extraneous ways of keeping water off of the important parts of the building. Hey guys, it's me again. In addition to including some ill-advised metaphors, I may have worked a little too hard at sugarcoating some of the less than ideal conditions. Thermal bridging, for instance, is usually seen as a problem since it lets out heat from the interior. The rust, of course, was not actually an intentional design choice. Instead, it's a result of improper detailing and lack of maintenance. I'm sorry if any of this caused any confusion. Another example where less is more is right here in the grass. Come here, take a look. The grass has been lessified. Less grass means that we can see and touch the dirt like it's in nature. Ugh. You almost forget that you're in a dense city like Chicago. There's no covering or obscuring the glory of the ancient virgin earth below. The ground upon which IAT stands was not, in fact, virgin earth. There was a neighborhood here already. Under this building, called Crown Hall specifically, there was a pre-existing building called Mecca Flats. It was originally a hotel that was built in 1893 as part of the World's Fair. It was a highly ornate structure that was renovated into an apartment building during the early 1900s. It was always known that Mecca Flats was here, but most people did think that it was completely and fully removed. During a recent renovation of Crown Hall, they uncovered some of the buried building elements and remains underneath the ground. This discovery renewed interest in the structure, and there were articles and exhibitions all about it. The treatment of the ground is part of the less is more strategy that's called Tabula rasa, which means blank slate. The entire campus design with clean geometries of standalone boxes was only possible if you eliminate all the existing stuff. All of that other stuff would be discordant visually with all the formal restraint of this elite private university. Once cleared, the next step is to establish a colonizing grid. Ooh, poor choice of words there. You can think of the campus as having an invisible, omnipresent grid that blankets the entire area. You see the evidence of the grid's existence when you know where to look. For instance, it governs how the buildings line up and how the structure inside subdivides the buildings themselves. During the design process, the grid wasn't just imaginary. It was a piece of graph paper upon which Mies van der Rohe himself played with scraps of wood. The grid is the ultimate colonizer. As it's overlaid on the ground, it can spread out equally in all directions. There's a reason that the city of Chicago is also based on a grid. It provides a foundation upon which absolute fluidity of space and movement can be achieved. Grids do offer freedom of movement in theory, but for the people that used to live here, the grid was much more confining. First, a kind of box was drawn around the street grid of the area. In this box, it was the only place in the city where black migrants were allowed to live after fleeing the Jim Crow South. Even though this area was functionally, economically, and racially segregated from the rest of the city, it developed a vibrant community. It had a thriving economy of black-owned businesses, and it was also a significant cultural hub for the development of art and music. The laws confining black residents to only this area were finally lifted in the 1940s. Some people did move to other parts of the city when they could, when the doors opened up, but for those that couldn't afford it, their only option was to stay put. It's not that all the middle class and wealthy moved out, but it certainly shifted the financial health of the area. Then this neighborhood was targeted by redlining, the practice of banks defining which zones of cities are good or bad for investing in. The areas with the red lines around them were deemed bad investments. So no matter what, anyone that lived here couldn't have access to funding for investing in their neighborhood. This is the ultimate state of simplicity, or the quality of being so simple and minimal that it almost defies logic. But this area must have taken a lot of hard work, tenacity, and sacrifice to reach this state. It's the epitome of openness and freedom, only achievable when there's so much less that there's nothing at all. So it turns out that areas like this, they were confiscated by the Chicago Housing Authority, or they're also known as the CHA. They acquired land through eminent domain and then bulldozed it as part of what was called the urban renewal campaign. To top it all off, the I-94 highway was built right along the western edge to divide this area physically to contain those that live in it. Today, the less is more slogan has guided all sorts of heroic efforts to fix the complex problems of cities, like building transportation, infrastructure, and housing. Modern architects and planners like Mies and Le Corbusier gave us the design strategies and tools for making our cities great. As part of that urban renewal effort, the CHA built massive public housing projects like Cabrini Green or Robert Taylor Homes. Where I'm standing in this scene was actually the site of one called Stateway Gardens. It was designed and built at the same time as IIT, but by the firm Hullaburden, Root & Burgee. It held 1,633 apartment units that were dispersed between 8 giant concrete high-rise towers. At the time, the mechanisms of modernist architects' planning ideas and things like that seemed like the best way for dealing with the complexity and the problems of the cities. You would just kind of clear it, simplify it, and then start again. But as early as the 1950s and 60s, it was obvious that this kind of renewal didn't work. But Chicago kept at it until 1966, when it was sued, and the judge ordered the city to stop it. For the next 30 years, the CHA was so bad at maintaining these properties that it was taken over by the federal government's Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, in 1996. There is an area just north of IIT, though, where the towers seem to have forgotten the genius of lessness. These buildings feature faux Neo-Georgian details like coins and pitched end gables and metal porches. None of these really serve any functional purposes. It's a sign that less is more hasn't spread evenly, and there's plenty of opportunities to strip things down to their bare essentials. Most of these CHA-created neighborhoods were torn down while the CHA was under HUD control. Stateway Gardens was demolished in 2007, for instance. This one, though, Dearborn Homes, had one of the worst crime and poverty rates of them all. But HUD actually decided to renovate the neighborhood instead of tearing it down. So between 2009 and 2010, the residents all moved out, and then the entire area was replanned with like larger units, new infrastructure, and those exterior design details that were able to give the buildings a sense of identity in place. Crime came down significantly as part of this. And in 2010, HUD actually gave back control of the city's public housing to the CHA after it was able to prove that it could manage these places more effectively. Today, the effects of less is more can be felt far and wide. From minimalist lifestyle blogs, tiny homes, to Apple products, you can see the evidence of the phrase's success plainly, wink wink, in your everyday life. The nothing in the never-ending story is this void that erases the world that was rich with imagination. It strips everything of its identity. It erases the cultural and the historical essences of places. It consumes stories and it leaves nothing in its wake. It's a contradiction. By spreading, it takes away and it destroys. You can thank modernist architecture, and specifically the architect Ludwig Mies van Rohe, for giving us one of the most incredibly powerful, self-contradictory statements of all time. Thanks, Mies. Many of these urban renewal projects were made of concrete. Concrete was cheap and fast and became a go-to material for buildings after World War II. Yet most of Mies's buildings were made of glass and steel and were designed to be honest expressions of the way that it was constructed. Those urban renewal towers, they weren't quite in the style of brutalism, though. That came more in the early 1960s and 70s here in the US. What brutalism did was that it was trying to have the same level of honest expression of construction, but through the material logic of concrete. And that's the subject of my next video, which is available to watch right now on the streaming platform Nebula. Honestly, without Nebula support, I wouldn't be able to provide you with such consistent, high-quality content like this. It's a creator-owned platform that offers an incredible value for both you, the viewer, and us creators. Sam at Wendover Productions, Real Engineering, Not Just Bikes, City Beautiful, and many more of the folks that you watch are on there. And once you join, you'll be able to gain access to our videos early, like that brutalism one, a full 2 weeks before it comes out on YouTube. And Nebula hosts exclusive content you won't find anywhere else. Sometimes when I get a tour of a place or I interview someone that's especially interesting, I'll publish a separate video on Nebula. There's more of my content out there waiting for you to engage. Stuff like the extended tour of the unit in Marina City, or the deep dive that I did into the history of the city of Bilbao, Spain. Finally, and probably the most exciting, are the originals series. One you might like is Real Life Lore's Modern Conflicts. It's an incredible documentary series that explores and explains the complexities of armed conflicts since 1980. Or you might like City Beautiful's deep dives into the evolution of the world's greatest cities. Who knows, maybe I'll have an original on there soon. You can gain access to this world of amazing videos simply by clicking the link on the screen or the one in the description. It's only $2.50 per month when you sign up for a year. Not only will you unlock the entire catalog of treasures of your favorite YouTubers, but you'll also be supporting me in producing content that explores the buildings that we inhabit. See you over there. Thanks for watching.